Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. So joyful that on this very pre-Christmas day, we are here to meditate more deeply about the meaning of life. The meaning of life to the point that it can boost our health. That's the reason why Kardec Radio is here, to nourish our souls, to give us tools to reflect deeper and also to live a better life, to share the good news of the many good things that are already happening on Earth, such as the pioneering research and efforts of Dr. Harold Kuenig, and not only in the United States, but throughout the world. He is here with us, and we are deeply honored that he's spending his time here with us at Kardec Radio, sharing the much that he has advocated for, the marriage, let's say this way, of spirituality and medicine. In its greatest meaning, we have a lot to learn from him. In the meantime, we want to share with you that Kardec Radio has listeners already in 54 countries in our world, in 48 states of the United States of America. And by the way, if you know anybody in South Dakota, North Dakota, and Wyoming, share that Kardec Radio is here for them as well. Because these are the only states that don't have Kardec Radio listeners yet. And we do certainly want to nourish the souls of all the inhabitants of the United States, but not only the United States of America, throughout the world. Our dear friends in all different nations who are here with us to enjoy the journey of living. Because the journey of living is wonderful. All we need to do is to understand why we are here. What have we come here for? And by the way, when we ask these questions, we cannot forget to talk about the fact that Allan Kardec himself asked questions in regard to wellness. When in 1857 he published the Spirits book, he asked if we are in any way okay to seek our own well-being. Is it okay? How many people feel guilty that they go to the gym because they are taking care of themselves? Maybe I should stay more with my family, etc. It's all about balance, but is it a bad thing to search for wellness? What is the answer of the illuminated spirits? It's very liberating. It's very freeing, because they say well-being is a natural desire, and God only prohibits abuse because it's contrary to self-preservation. God does not consider it a crime for you to seek your own well-being if it's not gained at another's expense and if it does not weaken either your moral and physical strength. This is question and answer 719 of the Spirit's book. Let us really deepen our understanding on what Kardec means. What do these illuminated minds bring to us? Isn't that what Jesus came here to do? That's why we're celebrating Christmas with Dr. Harold Kuenig with us, because Jesus wants us to apply his proposal into our lives. We cannot keep it within the realm of our homes or our temples. We need to bring his proposal everywhere and elsewhere in this life, including medicine and health in general, healthcare. It's all about this important inner desire of wellness, and God approves of it. But we need to balance this search, and we cannot gain it at anybody's expense. We cannot gain wellness by weakening our moral physical strength, because the fact of the matter is wellness is not going to be achieved. We are so happy that Jesus came to the earth. And the Jesus we're talking about is not this Jesus that people created out there that separated people, but the true one that really embraced everyone without distinction, that loves everyone to date because he still takes care of our planet Earth, who loves us unconditionally. We need to deepen our understanding about the concept of caring. And when we talk about caring, Jesus is the Lord of caring. And to talk about this and much more, we're going to dedicate this program to the applicability of Jesus' message and teachings by talking about Dr. Kuenig's research on medicine, religion, and health. Who doesn't need it? How can we get that? How can also we feel that the doctor also recommends that we keep working on our spirituality for the benefit of our own health. Is that already happening on the earth? Is that important? What are the benefits? Is there enough science out there to push us to that level? What do we need to do? Dr. Kenny is going to reply to these questions and many more, and we would recommend call us to ask your question. Call it at 858-769-4705 to ask a question to Dr. Kenny. He is here with us, and he will be very happy to address your question. No matter where you are, we are open here for you. And if you don't want to ask a question directly, send us an email or ask a question through the chat room at Kardec Radio at blogtalkradio.com. So to kickstart this show in the highest tone of Christmas wishes, we would like you to listen to this beautiful prayer that was brought in through the mediumship of Chico Xavier in Brazil many years ago. Is here to tell us more about Christmas, and we'll be right back with you.
Christmas Wishes. Lord, our Master, when I was a child, whenever Christmas arrived, I would adorn your name in flowers made of paper and plead to you in prayer, full of hope, that you would send through Santa a new walking or talking doll. Later, as a daydreaming adolescent, I would ask you for a castle of love and illusion for my ideal whenever I saw announcements about Christmas. Even later, as an old woman, whenever I would see Christmas shining at my door and my poor anxiety was almost killing me, I would multiply prayers and plead that you would give me, in my old affliction, the illusion of being loved. Even though, at the end of the road, I was sad and alone. Today, Lord, as a free soul in the hereafter, where solace refreshes me once again before Christmas lights, I thank you in peace, happy and comforted, the surprises of death and the tears of life. And if I may beg of your generosity, never give me what I most want, but give me what is best for me, and the gift of understanding between true humility and peaceful happiness, so that I may look for you day and night, Master of the heart.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Looking for a gift this holiday season? Look no further. The CD or the book Enlightening Messages brings back a true meaning of the holiday season. Buy your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org/bookstore.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
On December 6th, Strand Releasing proudly releases on DVD the Brazilian blockbuster Astral City, A Spiritual Journey. Based on the best-selling book by medium Chico Xavier, the film tells the story of André Luiz, a successful doctor who experiences an enlightening spiritual awakening after his death. When he wakes up in the spiritual world, he embarks on a new journey of self-discovery and transformation. Buy your copy now. Contact us at www.strandreleasing.com.
The newest edition of the Medium's Book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.ediciofamerica.com today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Did you enjoy reading the classic story about Little Red Riding Hood? Then you'll love the spiritual spin on this classic tale. The Big Bad Wolf, reincarnated by Rock Jessingu, is a great way to share new perspectives to your children about spiritism and the law of action and reaction. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Join us every Thursday live, Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Louise. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are celebrating Christmas with Dr. Harold Koenig. He is here with us, and we are most honored. He is an amazing scientist, physician, registered nurse, and a loving human being. We had the opportunity of meeting him first time in 2006 at the first U.S. Medical Spiritist meeting in Washington, D.C., which at the time was organized by Vanderlei Marques, the former president of the United States Spiritist Council. Dr. Koenig was there to open the whole event. I'll never forget. Never forget his approach, the clarity of his explanations, and the amount of scientific evidence that we already have to change the whole system, promoting spirituality in healthcare. But he's going to tell us more. And for us, Kardec Radio listeners, we really need this information. Why? And maybe you're asking there, why are we celebrating Christmas talking about medicine, religion, and health? Because we bet that Jesus wanted us to apply his teachings and not keep his teachings only in a separate corner of our lives, out there in a temple only. He wanted us to bring that proposal everywhere and elsewhere, and including in the sacred places of medicine. Because, as Kardec reminds us, Spiritism and science complete each other. Science without Spiritism is completely unable to explain certain phenomena solely by means of the laws of matter. Spiritism without science would lack support and control. And this is way before, if it sounds like Einstein, it's way before Einstein actually proposed his quote on religion and science. This is a quote that is from the book Genesis by Allan Kardec. Dr. Koenig has completed his undergraduate education at Stanford University, his medical school training at the University of California at San Francisco, and his geriatric medicine, psychiatry, and biostatistics training at Duke University Medical School. He's board certified in general psychiatry, and he is also formally board certified in geriatric psychiatry, geriatric medicine, and family medicine. He serves on the faculty at Duke University as professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences and associate professor of medicine. He is also the founder and former director of Duke's University Center for Study of Religion, Spirituality, and Health, and is currently director of Duke's current Center for Spirituality, Theology, and Health. He has published more than 300 scientific peer-reviewed articles, 60 books, chapters, 40 books, and many other good things. He has been interviewed in major national and international TV programs, from Today's Show to ABC's World News Tonight to Good Morning America, NPR, BBC interviews. He has given testimony before the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives concerning the effects of religious involvement on public health, and he has published many books, amongst them the latest one, The Handbook of Religion and Health, which was published this year, his autobiography, The Healing Connection, Faith and Mental Health in the Wake of Disaster, Spirituality and Patient Care, and especially the one we are mentioning with the title of this program, Medicine, Religion, and Health. We have a lot to learn from him, and it's quite interesting that his missionary mind has been promoting a great difference in our healthcare system. Dr. Koenig, thank you so much for being this morning with us at Kardec Radio. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We are so happy because, as we are saying here, you have done so much, and I'll particularly never forget how you opened the first Spiritist medical meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2006. And when you showed this compelling scientific evidence on the importance of spirituality in healthcare, how did you actually observe that we need to bring spirituality, let's say, could we say back to healthcare?
Well, initially, I was seeing patients in the hospital, and I noticed that many of them, their religious faith was very important to them. And so I started to do research, looking at these relationships to see whether you could objectively actually document that a person's religious beliefs and practices were beneficial or were, potentially harmful for their health. So that's kind of how I started out, trying to, objectively determine whether or not praying and going to church and believing in God made a difference in people's health.
And can you say that this far we have enough evidence that to that hypothesis we can say yes, healthcare would benefit from patient spiritual belief?
Well, the research is accumulating. It is accumulating. In the science world, you can never say that something is proven or that it's good for everybody. But there's mounting evidence that a person's religious faith does influence their coping with illness and consequently can affect their physical health as well.
But when you talk about that, it's beyond just prayer. So what would you say what are the features in spirituality? Or could we actually ask you, when people talk about spirituality, what do we mean by it? Probably people are there thinking about religiosity. Are they the same?
In terms of what the research shows, it's religious beliefs and practices that are related to good health. The word spirituality can mean so many different things to different people. So it's impossible really to study it because everyone has their own definition. But religion is something more common, and we understand what it means. We may not agree with it or like it, but the definition is pretty clear. And when you're conducting research, you have to have a very clear definition. And so most of the research that shows connections with better health have to do with religious beliefs and practices. Again, attending religious services, praying, reading religious scriptures, being committed to one's religious faith. So that's how I explain it.
All right. So how much has the system already accommodated changes according to some form of the compelling evidence that is out there? Have you seen changes?
There have been some changes. You know that medicine changes very slowly, naturally, because it affects people's lives and it affects everyone's lives in a variety of ways, so it changes slowly. But I have seen changes occurring. There are more medical schools, for example, at least exposing medical students on the relationships between religion and health and how to go about applying those relationships in clinical practice in a sensitive and sensible way without disturbing patients or trying to coerce them in any way, but simply addressing their spiritual beliefs, their spiritual needs, and the role that how that might affect their physical health and the kind of care that they would like to receive.
I know that you give whole training, you offer whole training for professionals who would like to incorporate these awareness, not only in their practice, but in their organizations, in their hospitals, and even instructing them to lead some form of research on medicine and religion and health in general, right?
That is correct. I do training sessions, both with regard to applying to clinical practice. I do a lot of speaking on that topic, but I also have a book called Spirituality in Patient Care that details the ways that nurses and doctors and other health professionals can address the spiritual needs of patients in clinical practice. But I also have summer research workshops that I teach. They're 5 days each here at Duke University, training people to conduct research on religion, spirituality, and health. So I do a lot of that training because I'm trying to, prepare young investigators and young scientists how to conduct this research so that they can get funding support for it and can carry out their research grants.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because when we talk about patient management, there's a lot of cultural differences to be overcome between sometimes the physician, the nurse, and the patient sometimes, or the family of the patient. And irrespective of where we're living in this world, there are often cultural differences, and they are so sometimes tricky to be overcome. And when you add the element of religion, especially in the United States, it's such a sensitive topic to be approached. Do you find in your experience in trainings that you give everywhere in the world more challenging in the United States?
Well, it's challenging pretty much everywhere because this is something new, and it adds time to what the doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals do. But once they start trying it out, I'm surprised by how they realize pretty quickly that this is very important in people's lives. And, the patients really appreciate it when their healthcare professional does, acknowledge and support those religious and spiritual beliefs. Now, of course, to do that, it has to be done in a way that everyone feels, respected and invited, regardless of what their particular beliefs or lack of beliefs are. So when addressing these issues in clinical practice, when you're standing in front of a patient, I often use the word spirituality because people can kind of define that for themselves, and they can, and the healthcare professional can then address whatever it is that the patient feels is important to them, and however they express that, whatever their religious beliefs are or whatever their spiritual beliefs are. Now, I have to distinguish that, what you do in clinical practice from the actual science that studies these relationships. And the science that studies these relationships are looking at religious beliefs and practices, not at spirituality defined by patients themselves. They're looking very clear. They are measuring, this research is measuring involvement in religious practices, of course, regardless of what the religious practice is, the way the questions are asked. How often do people attend religious services? How often do they pray? How often do they read their religious scriptures? How much is their life centered on their religious faith, regardless of what that faith is? But, that is what the research is studying. That is what the research is trying to determine on what is good for somebody's health. That's different than how you apply these findings to clinical practice, because it's not so important when you're talking with a patient to exactly define what they're talking about, like it is in research. And research is critical. But when you're taking care of a patient, it's a lot to have a term that is more diffuse and undefined, like spirituality. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to connect with the patient in that regard.
Yeah, that's interesting. I particularly find your proposal very important, but certainly when we talk about patient management, it seems to me that though it's foundational to consider and encourage their spirituality, for their practicing their spirituality for their well-being, I find it from an educational perspective to students, for example, medical, dental, healthcare students in general, recommending them something that is almost like the cherry on the icing. It's like so refined. It's so difficult even to approach to students, it seems to me, the proposal on considering the spirituality. Recently, I was talking about it with some colleagues at the University of Maryland, and they were like, well, some of them barely understand about the emotional needs of the patient, and why are they going to consider the spiritual side of it? I'm like, wow, I don't know. It's something really to think about. So what are the possible obstacles that one may face when they want to, when they are willing to raise this awareness where they are practicing medicine or nursing or healthcare in general? What would you say?
Well, you raise a good point. You're right. A lot of the doctors are just, they're so busy, nurses are so busy, they're barely able to address the emotional needs of patients, across the board. And a lot of them are not interested in doing that. They're just trying to, provide the medical care and what's expected and required of them. So that is an issue, the time element. But I think really the biggest barrier is just not being trained to do it. There are lots of things that doctors and nurses have not done in the past. They felt lack of comfort over, that have been very important. For example, taking a sexual history. For a long time, I know when I was in medical school, that was just barely, being started, and everyone was saying, oh, that's way too personal, you shouldn't be asking those questions. But, it's turned out that people's sexual practices are very much related to their health, which makes it, required by medical professionals to learn about that area of the person's life, inquire about it, and, address that if it's related to their health. And I really think it's the same thing with religion and spirituality now. I think the research is accumulating, showing that people's religious and spiritual beliefs influence their medical decisions. It influences their ability to cope with their illness. It influences their mental health, and not just emotional health, but it influences their actual response to the medical treatments. And if there is something about a person's life and beliefs that are actually affecting the response to the antibiotics or to the surgical operations or to radiation therapy, whatever the medical treatment is, then the doctor needs to know about it, needs to ask about it, and if it's something positive, to support it, and to understand where that patient is coming from. This is so important in terms of end-of-life care. Many people towards the end of life, and certainly their family, make decisions about end-of-life care based on their religious beliefs, whether or not to take a person off a ventilator and allow them to die, whether or not to write a do not resuscitate order or allow the doctor to write a do not resuscitate order, or whether to remove a feeding tube that will ultimately end in that person's death. Those decisions are huge, and they are oftentimes, probably, in the United States, probably most of the time, based upon the person's religious beliefs. And if that isn't a topic of conversation, if that is a no-no in terms of the doctor talking to the patient about it or the nurse talking to the patient, then there's going to be something affecting the medical care that is not being addressed. And so I think, yes, there are barriers, but those barriers are small compared to the potential impact that physicians and nurses addressing these issues in a more systematic and comprehensive way will ultimately have, not only on the patient outcomes in terms of medical outcomes, but in terms of the cost of care, because we know that many very religious people are praying for a miracle towards the end of life. When they have a family member or when themselves, they're praying for a miracle. And sometimes that goes a little bit too far, so that when a patient is dying and it's there is nothing that can be done medically. That sometimes people have to say, okay, this is that person's time to die, and let them go, and really then use their religious beliefs to help them to cope with that situation, as opposed to demanding futile medical care that is costing tremendous amounts of money in intensive care units and is actually taking away those resources from potentially younger people with a better chance of survival.
Exactly. Dr. Kenny, we have several questions here to ask you. One of them, it's about what would you recommend the patients to do if they wanted the doctors to participate in this type of awareness, but we'll give a short break and come back to you to learn more. All right?
Sounds good.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. Reborn for Love by the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk@gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and Psychograph by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral, digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit May, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're celebrating Christmas by bringing more awareness on the importance of practicing religiosity for patients in our healthcare system, raise the awareness of healthcare professionals, why they should address patients' spiritual needs. In the book by Dr. Harold Canning, Medicine, Religion, and Health, he says, psychological and social factors influence the physiological systems of the body that are directly responsible for good health and the ability to fight disease. Findings on religious spiritual involvement can be shown to enhance psychological health and social interactions. These are some of the things, of the many things. He has been a true advocate of one of the most important features in patient management, bringing the core belief system of the patient to the surface as a partnership of the heart between the healthcare provider and the patient. Who doesn't want your physician to be considerate of what you believe before you make dramatic decisions for yourself, for your loved ones? It's unimaginable that we would discard one of the most important parts of ourselves when we talk about healthcare. So, Dr. Kenny, what would you recommend to patients when, for example, they are willing to disclose to their doctors because they will feel safer in, for example, before a surgery, and say, oh, doctor, just want to share with you that before we undergo a surgery, I would like to do a prayer with the whole group. Can they do this? Would you recommend that they take that step or not?
Well, that's a really good question. Many patients are afraid of offending, their doctor, or may feel uncomfortable doing that. And of course, not all doctors are sensitive to these issues. It's, only about 10% of physicians in the United States regularly takes a spiritual history. And probably about half of the physicians might not respond real well to the request by the patient to pray. Now, that's on the negative side of things. On the positive side, I think that, if I were a patient and my life was at stake, or my future ability to function, was there on the line, I think I would just ask the doctor if he wouldn't mind a little prayer, and if he felt that this was something that he felt uncomfortable with, then I might just ask him, okay, well, just let me pray, and, you can just kind of participate here. You don't have to say anything, but I would like to say a prayer. So I think that, that's what I would do. I would ask. I would say, in a very sensitive, kind of a humble way, I'm anxious about what's happening. I think a little prayer, prayer is important to me, and I think a little prayer would help me. If you wouldn't mind saying it, or I could say the prayer if you don't feel comfortable doing that. That's I think would be totally appropriate. And if the doctor, just refuse and say, absolutely not, there's no praying around here, I don't think the doctor's going to do that. But if he does, then it's time to get a new doctor.
Exactly. That's a good one. Would you say that people are more open to these combination of spirituality and healthcare than ever before?
I would say that in the United States, they are more open than prior to the separation of religion and spirituality from medical care. What's interesting is that what's really new is the idea that religion and spirituality have been taken completely out of healthcare. That's what is really what's new. Through most of recorded human history, religion and spiritual practices surrounding healthcare and integrated into healthcare was the norm. That was normal. It's really only within the last 100 to 200 years that it's been taken out. And in many countries around the world, it's still integrated. It's not like in the developing countries or in the developed countries where it's been separated, where science and religion are so distinct. In many of the developing countries, they're still all very much integrated and part of health care, because medicine and health and well-being and and religion are all related in one way. So in some respects, I think many of the developing countries are far ahead of some of the developed countries in this integration. So I'm trying to get, the scientists and the medical researchers in the United States and Europe and other countries, developed countries, to realize that this can't continue to be like this. This separation is not healthy for patients or for the profession. So that's kind of my goal.
I think it's phenomenal, because as a scientist, I realize that sometimes we don't need enough papers out there to prove that one medication, new medicine, is efficient to treat XYZ conditions. And from the body of evidence that you bring to us, it seems to us, we agree with you, of course, we never know when enough is enough, but it's probably for us more than enough to say that if it brings greater health, it should be considered. Not even talking about prescribing and telling them, practice whatever spirituality you do, because that's going to promote greater well-being to you. So, Dr. Kenny, we have here one email that we received about something that you propose in your book on the partnership of religious community and health care. What is this all about?
Yeah, I really think one of the most important things as we move forward, particularly as our healthcare resources begin to diminish, and at least here in the United States, there's no possible way that we will be able to continue to provide the kind of medical care at the cost that is currently that we're currently doing. That is just not going to happen, and what we're going to see gradually is more and more limitations on the amount of health care that we can afford as a country to provide people. So what's going to happen as a result of that, particularly in an aging population where we are likely to experience a tripling of the elderly population over the age of 65 over the next 30 years, from 35 million to close to 90 million, perhaps 100 million people over the age of 65 with chronic health problems, et cetera. There's no possible way with a $50 trillion deficit we're going to be able to go ahead forward and provide that care. So what's going to happen, and already it's happening in our country, is that Medicare dollars are starting to cut back on these things. So we're going to see more and more of that with time. Now, as people start falling through the cracks in the healthcare system, there are going to be a lot of people without the resources to provide their health care. And religious organizations have traditionally been the ones that have felt that part of their mandate is to provide care for the sick, the old, the helpless, that this is part of the religious organization's mandate, certainly within Christian scriptures and within other religious scriptures as well. In Islam, it's clearly one of the 5 pillars of Islam that providing care for those in need. So here we have 2 systems that are working parallel with each other. They're not communicating at all. So the religious system is operating in one way, and then the healthcare system. Well, why not have these 2 systems work together? Mm-hmm. It would work beautiful if religious organizations could have programs to teach people how to live healthy and promote volunteers to provide care for those who are sick and in their homes and need medical care, and then the healthcare system would be inviting to religious communities to come visit people in the hospital. Would also provide the training within the religious communities to identify health problems early, to eat healthier, to exercise, it would provide that training. Mm-hmm. And so these systems could work beautifully together to help address the needs of people in the community, the health care needs. But it's not happening. Mm-hmm. With the single exception of in Florida, it's beginning to happen with the Seventh-day Adventist system. The Seventh-day Adventist, the Florida hospital system in Florida, given the older population there, mm-hmm. is now beginning to reach out to religious communities in terms of providing a parish nurse or a congregational nurse that can help ensure that people are taking their medicine right, that they have relief from their caregiver stress or whatever. But these communications, these alliances are beginning to start between the healthcare system and the faith community. And these are working very well, very well. They are keeping people at home rather than, having them go to a nursing home or having them having a catastrophic medical illness that puts them in the ER, emergency room, or puts them in the hospital. It's keeping people at home, lower the cost of medical care, and keeping people where they want to be. Nobody wants to be in a hospital or a nursing home, and everyone wants to be healthy and well and maintain their health and be the ones volunteering rather than the ones who are needing to have a volunteer. So this could happen because churches are really the only place within society that people are meeting together as a group, all ages, on a regular basis. There is no other place that people within the community meet together regularly. So tremendous amounts of education could be done in these settings and identifying, health problems early and getting them treated and explaining, health and medical problems to people who have been discharged. So anyway, that's kind of the idea.
That's phenomenal. And it reminds me, as you know, Dr. Alexander Moreira, who was one of your postdoc students there at Duke University, and the collaboration that you have with the Spiritist physicians from Brazil, Dr. Nobre and others. In Brazil, because of the Spiritist movement, the psychiatric hospitals have incorporated some form. So there is some form of partnership there in the mental care in Brazil. And you heard of it, right?
Well, that sounds very exciting. That kind of those movements, have been able to, within the psychiatric world. I wasn't aware of that until, you just said it. So that's very exciting to hear about that.
Yes, and it's fascinating to know that there is, especially in mental health care, which is so critical to consider the core belief of the family and the patient, as you know better, and to allow them to choose whether they want also to practice their spirituality along the treatment that they are receiving from traditional medicine. As you said, financially speaking, it certainly is less of a hassle, we would say, because you spend much less by incorporating, if we may say this way, we don't want to be simplistic, but these features in patient management skills as well. So, Dr. Kenny, we have here with us, as we're almost like a few minutes away from the end of the program, besides many questions that we have here Kirsten DeMello, who is part of the Kardec Radio team, and she's also a nurse, and she would like to ask you a question. Hi, Kirsten. Thank you so much for being with us at Kardec Radio.
Thank you for having me, Vanessa. And hello, Dr. Koenig. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you this afternoon, rather. My question is, as I'm listening to your talk today, is that have you ever had any backlash from other religious societies or organizations for the research that you're doing? Has anyone ever had any issues? Because I remember reading some things about other researchers and scientists and medical professionals who tried to bridge religion and spirituality, religion and medicine, spirituality and medicine, and some religious people sometimes have an issue with making those types of connections for a number of reasons. I was wondering if you had such backlash, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah. Boy, that's a great question. I have, and it's coming from the strangest source. It's coming from theologians. That's the kind of the amazing thing is that, people, I get very little, backlash from across the religious groups. They're all very receptive. I'm even now on the faculty as a distinguished adjunct professor in King Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia, in the heart of Islam. So all the religions are very receptive, but it's the theologians that have concerns. They feel like we're using religion as a tool to affect health, and that, or we're trying to, prove that scientists are trying to, document the benefits of religion, and why should theology be held captive by the scientists when, the benefits of religion are independent of whether they're good for your health or bad for your health. It's the truth that we're, so those are the concerns, that people might, use religion as a means to some other more important end, such as health. And those are, concerns. But, I tell you, there are so many people suffering with such terrible situations. And, so what if they use religion as a means to end or help with their suffering? In my opinion, I think that, it's that's what God loves us. God loves us and has given us knowledge of Him to be able to relieve our suffering. Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we do that? It'd be like my daughter coming to me because she's got an injured hand or foot, and she says, "Daddy, help me." Am I going to say, "Oh, well, are you just using me in order to get help for you?" I would say, yes,
right.
Use me. Absolutely.
That's a good one.
Thank you, Dr. King.
Thank you, Kirsten, so much for this question. Dr. Kenning, yes, we have a lot to learn. And what would you recommend? Today is Christmas, and when we talk about Christmas, we don't want to separate ourselves from anybody out there who does not feel joined in the heart with Jesus. But I know you have your belief as well. What would you like to give our listeners as a message of, hope on the many things that you're doing on this very special day for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. What would I suggest for the listeners? And, this is such a precious time of the year. It can also be a very sad time for many as they think about the past. But the new birth. I think in every religious tradition, the idea of birth is something that brings joy and brings hope. And no matter what situation any of the listeners find themselves in today, I think just the notion of the new birth, that there is hope. There is hope because of this new birth that we're, in the Christian tradition, we believe that this birth of Jesus now brings hope to us, that there's no problem that cannot be overcome with God's help. And I think many religious traditions have similar kinds of themes in them. And even those without any religious beliefs know that the great joy that occurs when a child is born, a new birth, a new life, the miracle. It's a miracle whether you're religious or not. Mm-hmm. So I would just encourage people to think about the new birth and also look for miracles during this season, because if they happen, they're going to happen this season.
Oh, Dr. Kenning, we are so deeply honored and thankful that you joined us today. We are very thankful as well for the amazing work you have been doing, and especially for us Cardiac Radio listeners, for the partnership you have established with spiritist physicians such as Dr. Moreira in Brazil, Dr. Nobre, and many others. Please receive a big hug of gratitude from all of us. Thank you so much, and we wish you a beautiful holiday season, and especially a special Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Take care.
All right, you too. Thank you. So, dear listener, you feel the joy? We feel the joy. We feel the joy in these very words that Dr. Kenning shared with us. The birth of Jesus brings hope to us. Who doesn't need hope? We all need hope, and this is what Christmas is all about. It's to remind us of the meaning of life. Why have Jesus come here? So, dear listener, think about it. Next week, we're going to come back and deepen our understanding about Jesus. It's going to be the Spiritist view on Jesus. We're going to have here a special interview. It's a conversation between us and our fellow Júlio Carvalho. We're going to be here, and many people are asking why we're talking about Jesus on New Year's Day and not on Christmas Day. Well, we're doing both, but specifically on pre-New Year's Day because we want to start the new year aligned with our guide and model, Jesus Christ. It's beyond the sectarian Jesus that people created. We're talking about the all-encompassing Christ consciousness. And to give to you a big hug because you're a faithful listener. You have been there. You have been sharing with us your love and sharing with many others. Here goes a beautiful prayer that was put together. It's entitled Christmas Card from the book and CD, Enlightening Messages. It's a mediumistic message that Chico Xavier received. It's named Christmas Card. Listen to this and enjoy your Christmas.
Christmas Card. At the dawn of Christmas, which awakens in you the music of hope, listen to the voice of someone who searches for the nest of your soul. Someone who lights up the star of generosity in your eyes and sweetens your feelings as though he had a harp of tenderness hidden in his chest. Yes, it is Jesus, the faithful friend who has returned. Even if you did not want to, today you would remember your sacred graces. As you recall your mother's songs at your cradle, your father's care when he held you in his compassionate arms, the patience of the teachers who guided you in school, and the pure love of old friendships that appear to you to be far away. You contemplate the street where lights and carols honor his glory. However, you fall over the weight of tears which cleanse your heart. It is so because he speaks to your soul, pleading for forgiveness for those who stumble, help for those who suffer, a coat for those who tremble in the vastness of night, consolation for those who groan discouraged, and light for those who lay in darkness. Do not hesitate. Hear his petition and do something. Smile again at those who have offended you. Bless those who have wounded you. Share your bounty with your brothers in need. Give 1 minute of solace to the sick. Offer a piece of bread to those who pray alone above ruins and abandoned bridges. Extend a soft bed sheet to those who await death without the coziness of a home. Give up a small sum of your wallet towards helping worn-out mothers who suffer seeing their small children squirm with hunger or make happen the happiness of a forgotten child. It does not matter if you say that you cultivate goodwill only today when Christmas shines on you. Let's start to live with Jesus, even if it is for a couple of hours every now and then, and we will learn little by little to be with him always, as much as he is with us, coming daily into our intimacy and sustaining us forever.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.